So I'm going to be talking for a bit. I always say this thing and then it never actually comes true. I always say this thing, I'm going to be talking for a bit, and then there's going to be some time for discussion. And then that never happens because I talk too much. But tonight I really hope there will be some time for discussion, because I'd like that. And then we'll say, I'm hoping we might have time for a little meditation at the end as well, but all that might go out the window depending on how much I say and how much you say. Yes, we've come to a particular point in the series. We've been doing this whole series on the Refuge Tree. Have some people been coming along? Who's been coming along to at least some of that series on the Refuge Tree? Okay, and then some people for the first time in this series. Who is the notion of the Refuge Tree brand new for? Okay, good, a nice mixture. Okay, good. So we're going to be continuing that series, but it should stand alone as well. And also this night in particular is in, well, preparation, you could say, really, for what Kasha Mitra was saying, these new order members. I love it that you said 7 or 8, because I thought that in my mind as well. Oh, it's 7 or 8. In other words, it's so many we've sort of lost count, which is quite good, because usually it's like 1 or 2 or 3, but actually it's 7 or 8, which is really good. That's next week, that these order members are going to come back from, in some cases, quite long retreats, and just share a bit about that experience however they can. And what I'm doing is I'm this evening talking about this symbol of the Refuge Tree, and also talking about ordination in particular, what that means, why even bother to do it. I want to try and say that, and I'm hoping that you will have questions on that, because I would in your shoes, if you know what I mean. So I'm hoping that you will have questions on that. That's why I'm hoping to leave enough time. So what we have got on the shrine, and I hope you've had time to have a little look at it in the tea break, is, well, an image, a symbol, and it's a symbol of the Refuge Tree, which is no ordinary tree, so I'll say a bit, I'll describe it a bit more. And the teaching for a whole session has come from that. So we can teach in different ways, or I shouldn't even say teach, we can try and communicate the Dharma or communicate anything in different ways by speaking and using concepts. But they, by their very nature, don't and can't go nearly far enough. They actually literally can't go far enough, because concepts alone can't reach down into the depth of our being, can't reach down, well, they can't get really below the conscious level of our being, whereas as a symbol, an image, can at least make the attempt to speak to the deeper levels of our being, the imaginal levels of our being. So that's why Buddhism uses so many symbols, yeah, not just Buddhism. So many things, our whole life is full of symbols, actually. But this particular one is the Refuge Tree, and it's, even a glance at it, it's the first time you've seen it, it's complex. We've got, in a way, quite a simple image of a sitting Buddha. Again, that's very rich, but it's simple. It's one figure and one gesture and so on, whereas the Refuge Tree has got loads of figures, and also it's on this tree which is made out of lotuses, which is not like a real tree. And I always think, I wish somebody, I don't know if anyone ever has, had made a sort of sculpture of the Refuge Tree, because really it needs to be in 3 dimensions. What I should say is this, this Refuge Tree is the Refuge Tree of the Triratna Buddhist order, of which we are part, our order members are part, and our whole sort of movement and all our centres are an expression of that. Every tradition would have its own refuge tree, so it's a very ancient symbol. So this is a particular version of it, but it would all be roughly the same. That central figure or set of figures, and then on this tree of lotuses. So if it was three-dimensional, what you would see, if it was a sort of sculpture or an actual vision in your mind, instead of a flat picture, you'd see a central figure of the Buddha and the Buddha of the past and the Buddha of the future on either side. And then you'd see on that plane, as it were, just a little bit lower down in the front, the teachers, the sort of living or, well, not literally living, but teachers of the present who all were living last century anyway, in the 20th century, and some in this century. The Dharma books behind, all the Buddha's disciples on one side, all the archetypes of enlightenment on the other side, above all the teachers of the past, ancient teachers of India, China, Japan, Tibet, above, then more archetypal figures above, and then at the very top, the final archetypal figure, Vajrasattva, is sometimes talked about as the last form before formlessness, because all these figures are appearing out of the blue sky, which I'll say a bit more about in a minute. Jnana Vacha in the very first week talked quite a bit about this. You can catch up on it if you weren't there. So so this very sort of rich symbol with these dimensions to it. So one thing to note, I mean, there's so many directions you could go and try and talk about here, and that's what we've been doing over the weeks. But one immediately apparent thing is, in this symbol, it sort of mixes up as if there was no difference, which is interesting. Figures of history and figures of myth, yeah, are just completely all sort of mixed up together. So you've got, if you come and look closely later, you'll see actual figures that are definitely figures of history, like the teachers of the present and past. They are figures of history, which doesn't mean they're not figures of myth, but let's just call them figures of history just now. You've got the Buddha's disciples, ragged, kind of in these ragged robes and so on, careworn, they're figures of history. And then you've got these other figures that are completely, purely of myth, yeah, the archetypal Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And they're all there, together in this, on this tree of light. Immediately though, even in the symbol, what's myth and what's history starts to break, the dividing line starts to break down. For example, for the teachers of the present and past, these so-called mythical figures would have been real living presences that they would have seen in visions in their meditations, and not just seen, they would have been taught by them, yeah, and guided by them. So, they've been real living presences. So to say that they're myth, that might make it sound like they don't exist anywhere, but they would have existed very, very strongly in the meditative minds of some of these historical figures. And then the historical figures cross over into myth, especially with the teachers of the past, but with the teachers of the present as well. So you've got these great figures, and you might have heard of some of them, Padmasambhava, Milarepa. As far as we know, they lived, but they've also become myths. The stories around them are full of magical occurrences and so on. They become far larger than life in a way. So history and myth intersects in the Refuge Tree, and actually Satyadasa gave a whole talk about that a few weeks ago, the intersection of history and myth. And particularly in the figure of the Buddha, the very central figure, but not just him, that completely intersects in the figure of the Buddha. So the Buddha was, as far as we know, a historical figure, but he's far more than that. He's far more than that. That's why we represent him on the shrine as gold, sort of illumined, to sort of show that he's far more. When we talk about the Buddha, we're not just talking about a figure from history. When we learn about him, we're not just learning a history lesson. It's something far, far more than that speaks to the depths of our being. Yeah. So, and you could say that about the other figures as well. So, a few more things just to introduce the whole symbol. So I've said that it would be, not just flat. It really should be in 3 dimensions, but actually it's in more dimensions than that. There's definitely a 4th dimension, which is the blue sky. Yeah. So the tree is in the sky. Not only are its branches and lotuses in the sky, but again, as Jnanavacha drew out, its roots are in the sky. The roots of that tree are in the sky. So that's quite poetic, just the sound of it, isn't it? What is a tree whose roots are in the sky? What does that mean? It's worthy of contemplation itself. The blue sky is a symbol for mind itself. But again, as Jnanavacha very clearly drew out on the first week, that this isn't talking about our ordinary mind, our sort of ordinary consciousness. It's actually got nothing to do with personal history. It's got nothing to do with conditioning. It's got nothing to do with desires or character or personality. In a way, it's got nothing to do with us at all, but at the same time it's got everything to do with us. All these things, in other words, all these things like personality, conditioning, personal history, and so on, are not really who we are in our very deepest depths of our being. We're something far more than that. Usually we're completely preoccupied with with just our mental states and habits, and we call that me. It's not that it's not me in a way, but it's like a fraction of me, and if we identify only with that, we're just identifying with a fraction of the possibility of what we could be. We might have had a little, maybe in meditation, but maybe in other experiences, like experiences of beauty, for example. Do you ever have that experience? I hope you have, I'm sure you have, where you sort of forget to be that little me. You're sort of surprised by beauty, say. You just step out and it's cold and clear, like there's that big moon, and you sort of forget to be, you forget all those preoccupations, and you're sort of temporarily, you're temporarily not that little me, Then of course it comes back because you think, oh, I must take a photograph of that or tell somebody about it or write a talk about it or something. But do people know that experience of being sort of surprised out of yourself? But doesn't it feel, you don't feel like not me, you feel like more of a me at the same time as not me in that little way, yeah? Does that sort of, yeah, good. So if you could imagine that, but much, much more, I think that's a bit more, or it would be much, much more, because it would be, well, maybe that's a glimpse of what this blue sky mind, when we talk about the blue sky being a symbol for mind itself, it's something like that, yeah? It's much, much, much more, yeah, much, much, much more. And in that blue sky, when we've got that blue sky symbol for sort of mind itself, capital M as it were, and everything arises within that blue sky. Everything in a sense is already there. Everything arises So a symbol, like the symbol of the refuge tree and all the figures on it, the tree itself, the lotuses, you could imagine that as crystallizing or condensing from the sky. Have you ever sort of laid down and watched clouds form? You know the way a cloud, it's a lovely thing watching a cloud form and dissolve, but watching them form is even more magic, I think. You know, a little something appears and then it's almost like more coalesces to that. So you can imagine these figures like condensing like that out of the blue sky, yeah? So that's the blue sky, that's the fourth dimension. There's another dimension, as well as the sort of blue sky. I'm speaking so metaphorically, I've got to just keep saying as it were all the time. But if the blue sky is, as it were, behind this whole tree, it's not really literally behind, but the tree's condensing out of it, then there's something else, and the something else is us, yeah? So there's us looking at it, sort of engaging with it, and it's the us that I really want to talk about tonight. It's the us. Where are we in this picture? Where are we in this picture? So that's what kind of I'm hoping the main subject of the talk will be, which I'll kind of be talking about ordination, but I'll really be talking about, well, what is it to live the fullest life we possibly can? So there's us, yeah? So we are looking up at that tree. So here we are sitting here, we're literally looking at it, but something like this refuge tree is, for a practitioner, for a Buddhist, is an object of meditation, an object of reverence and worship. It's something to be contemplated on, but not in a sort of cold way, but something to be loved, actually, and to open up to as a Buddhist practitioner. That is what you'd be doing. You'd be looking up at the tree, but also it's not just one way. So as it were, the tree is reaching down to us, And I wanted this particular image of the tree. Many images being painted even in our own tradition. This one's been painted by an order member called Chintamani. That's a reproduction of it. There's the huge full painting is at our retreat centre, Adhisthana. Some of you might have been there. On this, I think you've got the reaching down most clearly depicted, and it's depicted through the figure of Bhante Sangharakshita. So Bhante Sangharakshita, he's the founder of Triratna, and he's the teacher for those of us who are ordained. And this would be very traditional in images of the tree. He's the nearest one to us. So you might not be able to see from where you're sitting, but if you've seen other pictures of Bhante, you'll recognise him. He's got a little table in front of him, and actually he's got if you can come even closer, he's got a puja book on the table that's recognisably our puja book. I love that, actually. So he's got our puja book, our sort of liturgy, as it were, in front of him. And he's holding up a kesa, yeah? He's about to conduct an ordination, yeah? He's about to conduct an ordination. So that to me like really shows this movement of reaching down, yeah? Of reaching down. So Bhante is about to conduct an ordination. So, so who's he ordaining? So that's a question, really. So who's he ordaining? Maybe I'll just leave that as a question. Who's he ordaining? So I've actually put two pictures on the shrine. So I put the one slightly to the side, and that one slightly to the side is Bhante actually ordaining somebody, and that's the very, very first ordinations. Yeah, that's the very first ordinations. I'll come back to that in a minute, but they sort of join up for me. So yeah, maybe I'll talk about that next. So I think it's the same thing, yeah? So we're on the Refuge Tree, and in this picture of the first ordinations, you've got Bhante making the same gesture. And what he's gesturing with is this kesa, which is the outward symbol of our ordination, for those of us that are ordained. That's what we receive on ordination. And often when the person ordaining you, who used to be Bhante, but now that's been handed on, when they put the case around your neck, they give it a little tug like this. And they often say, that when you feel that sort of tug, that's you've joined the order. You've joined the order, which has taken you a long time, and years, at least a few years, and even up to, I don't know, the longest, I don't know, even 10, 20, 30, could be 3, could be 5, could be 10, 20, 30, different times for different people, but a lot of training and effort has gone into getting to that point where you're ready to be ordained and take the solemn vows of ordination. You've got to be ready before you make a vow. You definitely wouldn't want to do it before you're ready. Apparently, in the Tibetan tradition, if you take a vow and then break your vow, then even Padmasambhava can't save you. Yeah, so that'll be a warning to you. So you've got to be ready to make that solemn vow. That's why there's so much training and so on to get to it. So there's the echo in these two pictures of Bhante about to conduct an ordination, and in the picture to the side, that's the very first ordinations back in 68? Yeah, so over 50 years ago now. So that is the very first ordination. You can see a group of people often it's funny because they often say, Bhante, when he first came around, everybody was like hippies and stuff, but that must have been pre-hippie generation. They're all very happy. Or else they've all just dug out their like really smart things. And there's quite a lot in that picture as well. I've always liked it because what you see is the very first person to become ordained in our order is a woman, and there's women and men there, and that's always been very important to me because it shows that right from the start, Bhante broke with tradition in a good way, and sometimes it's good to keep with tradition, sometimes good to break it, and created completely equal ordination for women as for men. That was not the tradition at all, but right from the beginning we had equal ordination. And actually that picture, it made the national English newspapers at the time because it was the first woman to be ordained as a Buddhist in any tradition, not just our tradition, but any tradition in the West. Possibly the first woman to be ordained as anything, actually, at that time, 1968. So you see that. You also see that although Bhante's wearing robes, the others aren't wearing robes. So that's another thing you see right from the beginning, that Bhante created an order that was neither exclusively monastic or exclusively lay. He sort of did away with those terms, as it were, of monastic and lay, and created something quite different, an order of Dharma farers. So it shows that, so you could draw all that out, and I have a little bit, but that's not really my main subject for this evening.
I also wanted to know,
Yeah.
How would you know when you're ready?
Now you save that up for the questions. Yeah, that is a very, very good question. I'm going to say a little bit more, but and some of that might be revealed, but that's a very, very good question, yeah. Because as I've said, it's not that it's an exact length of time, it's different for different people. Good, so we'll come back to that. So the what I want to draw now isn't so much that was the very first person getting ordained and this is what it says, but more the other way around, slightly on a slightly more sort of subtle level, that at this moment, the order, our order, the Triratna Buddhist order, it was called at that time the Western Buddhist order, but it's the same thing, came into being, yeah? So for the one side of it was this person getting ordained and being the first, and there was 13 on that occasion. But the other side of it was at that very moment when that kesa went round this person's neck, the order itself came into being, and that was a new thing. That was a new thing that hadn't happened before, and also might not have happened. And this will partly answer your question, but it won't completely. So Bhante was very clear that what he wanted to create was an order, like not a society or anything like that. So a society, I don't know, you'd pay some money or you'd subscribe in some way and you'd be, you could still meditate and be a Buddhist group and so on. But he was very, very clear that he wanted to create an order. And he could only do that when he felt like he'd successfully ignited in at least one person, but actually probably needs to be more than one for an order, an understanding of going for refuge to the three jewels. I'll say more about what that is in a minute, that resonated with his own, yeah? So it's that resonance that's the important thing, that he and the ignited, yeah, that he successfully ignited in people an understanding of going for refuge to the three jewels that resonated with his own, yeah. So, just to recap on the three jewels are the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and if you remember on the first week, Jnanavaccha was saying that we actually are all, whether we know it or not, going for refuge to something all the time, because we're all looking for meaning. Actually, again, whether we're doing that consciously or unconsciously. But if we're not going for refuge, looking for meaning to something beyond me, something beyond us, then we're just left with something egoistic. And that, it's not that that's bad. Buddhism wouldn't blame you for that, but it cannot satisfy you. It won't satisfy you because it can't satisfy you. It's too small. You need to have something that's beyond yourself at the very least. And I would say you have to have something completely unlimited. Not just, beyond yourself is a good step. But unless it's unlimited, you're going to bang up against the ceiling of it sooner or later, and that will be painful and disappointing and, I don't know, just frustrating, you need to, I would say, to have an ideal that's unlimited. And that's what the three jewels represent for Buddhists, is an idea you can never get to the end of it. We say Buddha, Dharma, Sangha as if they're things, but it's not really like that. It's the Buddha means someone who's enlightened, but enlightenment, you could say, and Bhante has says, is a process of continual creativity. So that means it can never come to an end. And that's what I think, for our life to be fully alive, we have to commit to something that can never come to an end. So Bhante successfully ignited in people an understanding of this, that that's resonating with his own. So therefore he can conduct the ordinations. If, it's quite a thought, because if he was teaching meditation and so on, but if he just felt, gosh, our understanding isn't the same, it's not even nearly the same, he couldn't have done the ordination. He couldn't have done it, and there would be no order, and there'd be no one sitting here, or none of this. So those conditions had to be in place for there to be an order, and the sort of metaphor here is communication. Yeah, the metaphor here is communication. And this really goes right back to the time of the Buddha. So the Buddha is the first one, what makes him a Buddha is the first one to realise enlightenment, yeah? The first one, the new kind of being, almost a new species of being. Well, in a sense, the Buddha's gone beyond what we usually think of as a human being. Not that he's become more human than we thought humans could be, yeah? That's what enlightenment is. But then he's the only one. Lovely story about him going back to these 5 people who he previously knew. Haven't got time to say the association. You can imagine when he goes back, they're old friends of his, that they, for days and days, they're discoursing together, and he's trying to communicate to them what he has realised. But it's hard because it's beyond words what he's realised. But they keep at it. And lovely stories about one of them will go off for the arms round and get the food, for the rest, and then they'll come back and they'll keep going like that. And eventually one of them gets it. And his name's Kondanya. So it's the sort of most joyful moment in the Pali Canon. Kondanya knows, Kondanya understands. It's like the Buddha says it, but the echo it says goes right up to the heavens. Like Kondanya understands, because not only does that mean that now there's 2 enlightened people in the world, but it's the door's open. It's more than just the 2. It's the door's open. If somebody else could understand, well, potentially everyone else could understand, actually. Somebody else could understand what was previously not understandable. So it's giving me little shivers just to think of it, because, on a sort of microcosm, that's the order as well. You can imagine Bhante thinking, these few, I think they understand, what I'm trying to do, so yes, they can join the order. So, more cosmic, like the Buddha and Kondanya understands. So, and it's a communication. Do you see? There's a sort of, I can never say this word, reciprocity. It's a two-way thing. You can imagine the Buddha's trying to, communicate to these 5, and it's not like he's just given a lecture. They're asking, well, tell me a bit more, and he thinks, I'll try saying it this way, and I'll try saying it that way. They're drawing him out. They know he's got something to say, and they're enabling him to say it by their eagerness, by their receptivity. If they had just sort of gone, oh yeah, whatever, or something, the Buddha would never have been able to say it. We know that from our own experience, don't we? If somebody asks you something, say you've been on retreat and you come home and somebody says, oh, how was your retreat? You can sort of tell if they really want to know, or if they're just do you know what I mean? And if they don't really want to know, you can't speak, really, you'll say this or that. If they do really want to know, here's the magic. You end up saying sort of more than you thought you had to say. You end up realising there was more to it. A really good listener will draw out more from you, not even by speaking, but just by their attention. they knew you had to say in the first place. Yeah, do you sort of know what I mean? Isn't it wonderful when that happens? You think, oh God, I didn't realise I was going to say all that. And you think, oh yeah, God, right? They help you to articulate yourself to yourself as well. So that must have been what was happening at the time the Buddha and Kandanya, and then the whole other four realise as well, and then you've got the Sangha actually. So there you've got that metaphor of communication, that reciprocity, and you've got it there. That's the metaphor in the ordinations, yeah? It's sort of representing something alive, yeah? It's representing that life comes from life. That the teachings only come alive in the context of people, of Sangha. The whole of Buddhism, the whole of the Dharma is a living transmission. Yeah, in a way that's what you could see. If you to try and sum up what is the Refuge Tree trying to say, if you to try and put that into words, it's trying to represent, it's doing far more than that of course, because it's speaking to our imagination, it's this living transmission. And of course in the transmission and the recognition, something's magnified, so it adds up to more than the sum of the parts, you know. When Bhante recognises that somebody has understood going for refuge in the same way as he has, and when they recognise, oh, I found a teacher that can teach me, you know, that this is what I've always wanted, I've always longed for. In that sort of mutual recognition, something's magnified in that. It's not, I don't know, it's not just like looking in a mirror, like coldly or something. It's like more like a fire's lit. I think ignited is the right metaphor actually. Something's lit. And maybe I was thinking about if I could try to put into words a little bit more about what say Bhante's seen. I suppose it's what he's seen in these people he's ordaining now and subsequently is not just their potential, but it's the potential activated, because actually everyone's got the potential. Bhante would have seen that in everyone. The Buddha would certainly have seen that in everyone. But what Bhante is saying is the potential has been activated and is sort of on fire enough that it looks like it's not going to go out. Yeah, that's it, isn't it? It's on fire enough, this activated potential, which is slightly mixing the metaphors, but I think the one of fire is good. So Bhante's seeing in these people, something's on fire enough that I think it's going to stay alight. Now that's interesting, isn't it? Because it might not stay alight. And in fact, out of those first 13 people, only one of them remained in the order. These days, usually people do, on the whole, remain in the order once they join the order, because we make it quite hard for it to happen, so that we're sure, yeah? But do you see how you couldn't completely know that the fire was going to stay alight, but at the same time you can get a sense of it, oh, that fire looks quite alight now. It looks alight enough for me to sort of believe in it so far and ordain this person. That's probably not a very scientific answer to your question, but we'll come back to it. But it's
not answer the question though, because I was just wondering, is it that person who makes that decision, or is it the teacher? And then I thought, obviously, it's got to be the teacher who decided.
It's sort of yes and no, and we'll come back to it again, because there's a mutuality to it.
That's true.
Yeah, there's a mutuality to it that hopefully coincides at that moment. But yeah, there's a potential activated, and activated enough, if it's a plant or something, it looks like it's going to stay alive. If it's a fire, it looks like it's going to stay lit, yeah? at that point. You never know for sure, but it's a good chance, yeah? So keeping looking at the big image of the tree, you've got Bhante as nearest to us as the person conducting the ordination of someone, in a sense conducting all the ordinations. That's even true, even though he's not living anymore. In a sense, he's conducting all the ordinations in Triratna. I'll say why in a moment. He's a gateway. Yeah, he's a gateway in both directions. He's a gateway for us to the other figures, leading all the way through the figures to the blue sky. And that's the ultimate. That's representing sort of reality itself, capital R, mind itself, capital M. That's representing the ultimate. But it's sort of the other way as well, because you couldn't just show the blue sky. Like, say instead of that picture there was just a square of blue, you wouldn't, I was thinking it would just be the blue sky, but then I thought you wouldn't even know it was the sky. You would just think, why is there a big blue square on the shrine, tonight? If we just had a sort of... so, in other words, it's the figures that make the blue sky the blue sky. It's the figures that emerge out of the blue sky that make the blue sky in its fullest meaning. Or else it would just be this, we'd just have a drawing of this blue square, or it would just be the blue sky that we might lie under on a sunny day, or look at, whatever. So it's not just, what I'm trying to say is although the blue sky is the ultimate, it's not just that these figures are an intermediary to the blue sky. It's not enough to see sort of reality everywhere. There sort of needs to be this mutual recognition. There needs to be this reciprocity, element, and that's what the figures are representing. That it's a kind of, maybe I've said it already. There's something two-way, in all these, in the ordinations, in the Buddha talking to Kandanya, there's something two-way, and that itself magnifies the experience, It's a bit like, I was thinking on a sort of much more mundane level, but still kind of quite lovely level. I was thinking about I used to say my little nephew. I've talked about him in talks before, but he's definitely no longer little anymore. He's taller than me at 19 now. I haven't got kids myself, but I've got nieces and nephews, and I've got two nephews I'm particularly close to because I looked after them when they were very young, when their mum, my sister, was ill. And when they were like 3 and 5, and I got very close to them at that time, and they're now 19 and 21, and it was lovely. A couple of visits ago, I'm just back from Scotland actually, and a couple of visits ago I was talking to the 19-year-old Jack, and he's studying music now, and a whole new thing happened. I mean, it's always been delightful, our relationship, so it's not that it wasn't a good relationship before. From right when he was 3, it was. I've enjoyed that relationship, but a new thing happened where he was telling me about his musical studies, and I feel a resonance with that as well, because it's music and it's creative, and I feel like what I'm trying to do with meditation and the Dharma is, essentially embarking on a creative path. And he was talking to me about how you learn music and how you practice and so on. And I thought, oh yeah, this is just like meditation. And then and suddenly he said something, I thought, oh, I've learned something from you today. It was such a delight. It went from, do you see what I mean? It went from like I'm the adult and he's like the child, and then he grows up, to suddenly, now we're actually learning things. There's mutual now in a new way. I'm trying to say it carefully because it's not that there was anything wrong with it before, but it was a new thing. Do you ever get that thing? You think, oh, there should be a new word for this particular delight when he can say something to me. But I think, oh God, I've learned something new, you know. It was a new delight in the relationship. And I thought, oh yeah, we need that. That's what Bhante means when he says it's not enough to see reality everywhere. There needs to be a mutual recognition. Yeah, there needs to be a mutual recognition that's sort of activated both ways. So, just deciding whether to pause here or say a little bit more. What I'm really trying to say is that reality is personal. You know, reality is personal. It's not. Life's personal. Like Buddhism's personal. There's no such thing as Buddhism, really. There's people practicing. There's no such thing as life, is there? Without people and other creatures living it, you know. It's so there's no such. So that's what I mean when I say reality is personal. Yeah. So maybe I hope that's sort of. I hope that said something with this metaphor of communication of what the refuge tree is and what ordinations is I'm trying to draw an aspect of ordination that's about communication, and in a sense, not exactly mutuality, but it's two-way. Yeah, it's two-way. Even though, you know, there's Bhante, the teacher, and the people he's ordaining disciples, it's two-way as well. You need both for something to be ignited. For Bhante to conduct the first ordinations, he needed people to ordain. But that's just a truism, isn't it? And they couldn't just be any people. They needed to be people that had understood something in that way. The last thing I'll say is on the subject of ordination is it's not an endpoint. So the Buddha talked about ordination going forth. It could be either barren or fruitful. It could be either barren or fruitful. And what's going to make the difference is the amount of virya, which is the Buddhist word for ardour, sort of energy in pursuit of the good there is. And so, in a sense, you could say ordination's just the beginning. It's what happens after that's important. And for me, my ordination only makes sense in the context of trying to open that door of the Dharma, or at least be one of the people helping to open that door of the Dharma for other people. That's the only thing that makes sense of my ordination. I suppose what the Refuge Tree is saying is it doesn't start with me and it doesn't end with me. And I've been lucky enough to conduct the ordinations of other people, which is, it almost sounds like a cliche to say it's a privilege, but it really is a privilege. And it's more than a privilege, actually. It gives meaning, and it gives meaning to my ordination, and it magnifies my ordination. It makes it more. It stretches me, but even that sounds, it doesn't completely do it justice. It makes it more. It makes it more. So there's, after ordination, there's something that comes out from your ordination, but also I can only conduct those ordinations because of that refuge tree. Because if it wasn't for that refuge tree above my head, as it were, if it wasn't for Bhante above my head, all his teachers, all those figures, historical, archetypal, and the blue sky sort of behind it all, well then it would just be a bit silly, wouldn't it? Because it would just be me kind of, well, just, I don't even want to say it because it's not, it sounds a bit, it's more than silly, it's a bit kind of, I don't know, it's just not, it just wouldn't be very good, would it? It'd just be me trying to conduct ordinations, and what would that be? It would be impossible. I can only do it. I can only do it when all that's behind me and sort of coming through me, as it were. So that's what activates the whole thing. So the whole thing, maybe all I'm trying to say really is this whole symbol is a living symbol, and it's sort of alive. It's keeping on going out and out, like sort of fractals in a way. It's more and more spreading out in every direction. It's got kind of infinite dimensions probably. So it's something that's alive, and it's something that we in the order are trying to make more alive by enacting it more and more. So maybe I will pause there, 9:26. I think we've got about 10 minutes or so for questions. But really, the main thing to say is basically come next week, because everything I've said, it doesn't really matter whether you really remember it or not. What really matters is you meet some more, well, you meet those of us here in the order as real live order members, but there's nothing like meeting a new order member who's just come from their ordination retreat, who's still sort of aglow with that, to really know what ordination is and to really know what this refuge tree is. But let us, we'll have some questions, so maybe we'll alternate. We'll have one from here and then one from the people watching online. So did you, has some of your question been answered?
It has, yeah, thank you.
Oh good, okay, great, good. Good, well maybe somebody might have another question from this room. I hope you have. Yeah, good.
Yeah, you said that you need to find something that doesn't end.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, and what is that for you? I'm just curious.
Okay, so I'll just repeat the question so everybody at home here. So I was saying that, yeah, you have to find an ideal that doesn't end. And what is that for me? Well, for me, you see, that is the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So the Buddha represents enlightenment. And if you think of enlightenment not as an end point, but as one's infinite potential for growth and further expression, then that is an unlimited ideal. And if you think of the Dharma as truth itself, you'll never come to the end of it. You'll never get to a point and think, now I've understood everything. Actually, it's not true. So on enlightenment, you would completely understand, but you would still, the Buddha sort of worshipped the Dharma. There would still be something to worship in that, look up to it. So in that sense, it's infinite, yeah? And then the Sangha is a spiritual community. So for me, I would say that is the effort to create, to keep creating the spiritual community, in spite of all its imperfections and so on. You keep creating it, yeah? So that's that will never come to an end because it's by its nature, it's creative. Yeah, does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. And can you see? Maybe I'll ask you a question.
Yeah.
Can you see? Or you or MDC? Why? Can you see what I meant when I said even if your ideal is beyond you, anything less than that, you bump up against the ceiling. Say your ideals to, I don't know, what could it be? Make $1 billion or something like that. Say you did it, then you bumped up against it. I mean, that's a bit of a not very imaginative thing, but you know, or even to something more altruistic, but you get to the limit of how far it can go, and then there's a frustration, yeah?
Yeah, no, I know
Yeah.
exactly what you mean.
Do you know exactly what I
Yeah,
mean?
know exactly what
Okay.
you mean.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and when you say, so you say the Buddha, right? For me, in my mind, it's like the Buddha was a person, but then you said he transcended that.
Yeah.
Right? He became more than a person. So would I be right to say that in a way you're worshipping the Buddha?
In a sense, yes. Yeah,
Mhm.
in a sense, yes. But not worshipping like a god or anything like that. But yeah, but worship then is the sort of appropriate response, because you're worshipping in order to move yourself more towards that. So in a way, what we worship, we become in Buddhism. So we worship, it sort of starts to close the gap between us and that idea. So we can all become that. Yeah?
Mhm. So we can all become like the Buddha.
Yeah,
Have
we-
people become like the Buddha?
Well, hope
And
so.
it's recorded, or how does it?
How do we know?
Yeah, how do you
Well,
prove-
apparently you have to. Apparently, it takes one to know one, really. But what I do know, and I'll move on to another question. The important thing for us is, and I would really encourage you to look for someone like this in your life if you haven't already found them, is to find someone who has at least more of a degree of enlightenment than you have. So someone who's got more metta than you have, someone who's got more virya, energy in pursuit of the good, more courage, more mindfulness. So that's all you really need, is someone who's a bit more along, to see that trajectory is possible. Yeah. But yeah, that's the birthright of every human being, is to become enlightened. But it definitely won't be automatic, but it's definitely possible through effort. Ippolit, is there any question from? Okay. Okay, sorry, I should have said please do ask from anyone else from here?
I'm just like looking at the picture.
Yeah.
Bante, and I'm wondering what would happen to the picture once he,
Well, how does he? Okay, what do you think? So, when is that sort of pregnant moment going to be enacted?
What?
The pregnant moment of him holding the case up.
And then you feel the tug. With you.
Yeah.
And then where would you feel? Well, at the moment, the eye line is like I'm looking up, and it's all beautiful. And I just want to look at it for a long time, actually. But then, what would the picture transform and change? Would you become part of the picture?
That's interesting. I can see what you mean. Yeah, I was thinking about that myself, because obviously I've been ordained, and I was thinking, am I part of the picture? I think after ordination you're part of the expression of the picture, and I think that's what I meant by it's living, and I think that's important, because if there's no one to ordain, then Bhante can't ordain anyone. So we're in it as well, even after ordination. But not so much in it, because in a way, we're not in it in the sense because the picture is what you would worship and prostrate to, and you wouldn't exactly do that with us, but we're an important part of it somehow. I think that's what I was trying to say, and I think that's what, if we weren't here to be ordained, at least some of us, then that's just like, that doesn't mean anything, that gesture of holding the case. So I was just then holding up a bit of white thing, It only becomes a caser. It only becomes a symbol if there's someone to ordain. Yeah. But then we're not exactly we're part of the expression. Yeah. Yeah. You keep looking at the picture. That sounds really good, actually. Yeah, you're right in front of it. Yeah. Anyone from online yet? No? Okay. So, any other questions? it sound like becoming ordained? Obviously some of us are ordained, some of us, few people in this room, more than a few, are aspiring to become ordained and have actually made a request to become ordained and are in that training. And others of you, just curious what you're thinking. Are you thinking, I'm never going to do that, why would I do that?
What was it like for you? How long was your journey before?
How long was it? Well, that's an interesting question because it's got a literal answer and it's got a sort of non-literal answer. So on my very first retreat, which was the equivalent of the winter retreats that Akasha Mitra was talking about, on that very first retreat, which was about maybe 8 months, I came along in April and I went on that first retreat in December. I knew on that retreat I was going to become ordained. I didn't know what it meant, really. I didn't have any idea how you did it or what the training might be, but I knew...
You're ready to commit.
Yeah, that I was ready to commit. And I don't even know if I had those words, I'm ready to commit. I just somehow knew. But then it took me a while to ask. So that's quite an important part of becoming ordained. You have to actually ask. Maybe that sounds like, of course, but it's got to come from you yourself. It can't be sort of done to you, as it were. You've got to ask, and actually, in a way, you've got to keep asking. Even in the ordination ritual itself, you ask again. And that's to really say, this really is me, and it's my decision, and I'm doing it for the right reasons. So let's see. So I think that whole process from that first retreat to becoming ordained, for me, took about 8 years, but it took me about 5 of those years was just working out to ask. Funny, isn't it? I knew I was going to do it, but it still took me 5 years to do it. I can't really explain why that was. It was probably both good and bad reasons for it taking so long. There are probably good reasons, like finding out what it was, trying to explore the order a bit, but also there was probably bits of me that were going, oh, I can't do that, or I've got to be a special person to even make that request or something. And they're not particularly good reasons not to, because you don't have to be any particular sort of person. You just need to want to commit, you know. You need to know a bit. You need to know roughly what the order is, and roughly, I'd say it'd be only sensible to find out a bit more. But they're the right reasons to wait for a bit and explore, but it can be a bit of a mixture. Yeah. And then the training, I always talk about the training, well, I've talked about it as you're getting ready in order to make these solemn vows. So you definitely you're getting to a point where you're integrated enough that the whole of yourself is behind this decision, as far as, and positive enough to sort of bear the weight of that decision, because the big thing, as Akasha Mitra said, is lifelong at least, this commitment you're making. So the training consists on getting to know what Buddhism is, the Dharma is, getting to know what our order is, but really it's about getting to know who oneself is, to the point of, can I make this solemn vow? And people are helping you to do that. So that's why it's sort of mutual. You're sort of getting ready you're trying to get to the point, think, oh, I really can do this. And you want that witness by people that say, oh yeah, I think you are ready to do this. And hopefully that coincides with each other. Sometimes it doesn't quite. Sometimes, somebody might think they're ready, and the people who know them very, very well might say, no, just wait a little bit longer. And usually when that happens, not always, a person turns around after the year they've waited and said, no, you were right, I did need that other year. Usually. It's not an exact science. Sometimes it's the other way around. Everybody's kind of saying, no, like, she's ready, she could do this. And the person's going, oh, I'm just not that sort of person. Or they think they've got to be like almost enlightened before they get ordained, which you really haven't. It's not really about, it's not about any sort of attainment, but it's about commitment, yeah, and the ability to make that commitment, which it is quite a serious thing, knowing that you're able to make the commitment. And then after ordination, you can live that out in all different ways. I mean, the people you see here at this class are living it out by teaching at this class, but there's all sorts of order members all over the place elsewhere, bringing up their kids out on the night shift, you know, in the hospital working or something, doing other things. In a way, you sort of see those of us that are doing this, but there's all sorts of other ones doing other things as well. So, yeah. I think it might be time. Oh, I've got a question.
There's
Okay,
one
good.
little question.
One more question.
Wendy is asking, you mentioned earlier that Dante is still ordaining people. What did you mean?
Oh, what did I mean? That's a good question. Who asked that question?
Wendy Hunt.
Hello, Wendy. That's good. Thanks for reminding me that I hadn't said that. I think what I meant by that, so the question was, that I said, in a sense, Bante's still ordaining people, and he's literally not alive anymore. He died 3 years ago. Even so, he hadn't literally ordained anyone for many years. He's handed that on. I think I meant, like, for myself, but I know I speak for all the other preceptors as well, that we couldn't do it without Bante there. The way I feel it is above me, so I'm able to do it because I've got Bante. I was going to say in my imagination, but it's much more than my imagination. In my being, I've got Bante there, and that's what enables me to do it. My ordination comes through my preceptors from Bante who ordained them. So my ordination depends upon Bante's ordination, and Bante ordaining my preceptors who ordain me, and also I can only conduct an ordination because of that. So in other words, if you wouldn't want to, but if you took Bante out of that picture, if Bante somehow wasn't on that refuge tree, I couldn't conduct ordinations. I just simply wouldn't be able to, so that's what I meant. Yeah. Good. Okay, so I think I really do need to stop now. I think Kusasara's going to finish the class, yeah. But thank you all. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm in the unenviable position of speaking after a really, really good talk, which is something I never really want to do. But this is a particularly special night, sad night for us, because Subhadramati, many of you won't really know this, that Subhadramati's been coming to Dharma Night, teaching on the Dharma Night team 12 or more years. She has really, really thrown her heart and soul into this class, and is no longer going to be a regular teacher. She's leaving London. We really hope that sometime she'll come back and give us more classes, teachings like this. So, we wouldn't normally sort of interrupt or finish a class after a teacher has spoken, but just really on behalf of the team, want to say thank you to Subhadramati, and just want to say how much, I don't know what Dharma Night is and what it's going to become. If it in any way maintains a strong standard, it's because of Subhadramati's principles about a class being about you all coming, you all who are watching. That communication that she's talking about in her talks is because she believes in everybody here, believes in people's potential, and has shown us that potency is the most fulfilling thing to be working on in ourselves and in others. And the standard of this class of intelligent, energized, live teaching, we've all learned from Subhadramati. So if you find that it doesn't reach those standards, you can come and let us know, because we really look up to and want to maintain that. And just a little thank you from all of us.
Oh, thank you. surprise.
Yeah, good.
You got one past me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you want to say what you're going to do next as well?
I'm going to go a wandering. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sort of go forth, as it were. I'm going to leave and take my little suitcase and go to different Buddhist centres. Yeah, and hopefully pop back from time to time. Yeah. Good. Okay.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Yes.
So you can put the mats and cushions away. And
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was lovely. That was really nice.